All right, like I said, we have to lay out our first plate, and then we'll go ahead and lay out the rest of our plates. First thing we'll do is we'll lay out on our plates for the studs. So in other words, it's called layout for the studs or just layout. We're going to go from this point right here, the inside of the wall. We're going to make sure we have a stud on the inside of the wall so we have sheetrock backing when we go to put our sheetrock in. Okay? So we'll go ahead and we'll put one stud there. And what I'll do is I'll just lay my tape out and we'll mark, just like we did on the floor joists, 3/4 of an inch back from the layout marks on the tape. But while I'm on the subject, some people like to go ahead and lay out windows first. I particularly don't. I like to lay out, make sure I get on the plate all my studs first, because if it's a low window and we have to put little tiny studs on top of the header, then we want to make sure that those studs line up with the studs down below. So if it's a window and we have small studs here and small studs up above, those line up. So if you're sheeting on the outside or on the inside, you're still going to have the nailing points. Okay? All right, let's lay out. We're going to lay this out just like we did the floor joists. We're going to go 16 inches on center. We'll put an X, and I'm doing 3/4 of an inch behind my layout mark. We do this because that centers the stud on layout. There's little arrows on your tape that tell you what layout is. It's every 16 inches. Why we just didn't do it every 10 inches like they do in Europe, or 10 centimeters, I don't know. But 16 was a good number. They liked it, so they stuck with it. Okay, I keep doing this all the way down. And then I come to the end here. And I have a stud that's just a few inches from the end of my wall here. So what I'll probably end up doing is I'll end up just putting 2 studs at the end here, just so I fill in that little gap next to the end of the wall. And that will keep me on layout. All right, so I'll just march through here and I'll get my speed square. And what you can do, what helps, is if you have your keel, that tells me that I have 2 studs there. I have a line with the red, that tells me that the stud's going where the red is. Keel's good because keel doesn't wipe off very well. Rain won't take it off, sun won't take it off, it won't fade, and even if it does fade a little bit, it's still very easy to see. Now I do each of these steps in order because I don't want to just mark and then move on to laying out windows or something. I want to mark and then make sure that I know which side my stud is on. Do my layout mark where my stud is. I do this so I don't miss it, and then when I pull the plates apart, I run into a problem. So be consistent. All right, what's happening here is we're going to have this wall coming in like this. And so when we have a stud that is going up the wall like this, we're going to want to nail through this stud into this wall. So what we do is we put 3 X's here. Okay? I'll explain to you how we build that section of wall when I'm doing the framing, but suffice to say it's a stud, a block, and another stud, so it turns out to cover our first stud, and there's a little blocking in between. So when this wall comes into here, we have 2 good pieces to nail into. Okay, our next step on this wall would be to locate any walls that are in here. And what we would do is we would say if this line right here that we used to do our nailing was a wall. Let's pretend that this was a wall right here, coming into here. So we have a wall that's coming into this here, into this wall. What we would do is we would mark right down here, right where the line is. Again, we'd make a mark. And then I would measure over 3.5 inches. And then what I would do is I'd put an X here, X here, X here, X here. And then I'd put like a little curly Q here. That tells me that there's a wall coming into this wall right here. And I'll build a partition for you, and that's what this description is. It's called a partition. It's a section of wood that you put into the wall that intercepts a wall coming into another wall, and it also leaves a stud and a stud on each side. So once you put your sheetrock on, you have backing on either side of the wall that's entering the other wall. But I'll get to that when we start framing. I'm going to scribble this out a little bit because I don't want to do something wrong and start building there when I build the real wall. I've been given this plan to lay out the windows, and what it's telling me is that I have these windows on this wall that I have to lay out. Now I see that this is 5'3" and that's 5'4". This is 3'7" and this is 3'8". So to me that tells me if I add these two up and these two up, they make sense that this window is dead center in the wall. So the very first thing I do is I measure the length of this plate. "18 feet 1/2 inch, which is 216.5". Now quickly, what's half of 216? That'd be 108. And half of a half is a quarter, so 108 1/4. And I know that's pretty good because it's 9 foot 1/4 and that was 18 foot 1/2. So this is the center line. So I'll march over here, make a line, and then what I do is I put a CL, that's center line. And this window is a 4.0 window. It's 4.0 by 4.1, so they talk about the width first and the height second. So I know that this window is 4 feet. So I take my tape, I put 2 feet on my center line, I make a mark, and a mark. That's the width of my window. All right, so I make a line from point to point. It's a little arrow. And that tells me that's all window right there. And that overrides my studs. Then, on the sides of the windows, we'll have one short stud that goes up underneath the header. It's called a cripple or jack stud. And then we'll have a stud that goes right next to the edge of the side of the header, and that's called a king stud. Okay? So what I do is I look on my speed square and it shows I have a measurement across here. I just line up 1.5 inches and I make one mark and I line up another 1.5 inches and I make another mark. I put a C for a cripple and an X for the king stud. I'll do that on this side as well. 1.5 inches. That lines up very nice with my stud, so I make a mark over my keel here turning that from a stud into a cripple, and then I go 1.5 inches more, and I put a big K there. I did an X over here, but I guess a K is better because that tells everybody it's a king stud. Okay? So I have a cripple or a jack stud and a king stud. And we know that the window's this far. Now, a good thing to do is to measure your header length at this point. On windows, the header is 3 inches longer than the window width. On doors, the header is 5 inches wider than the door width. The reason why you do 5 inches wider is because on a door, you'll have a frame, you'll have a door, and then you'll have the frame, and you have to have that added space for the frame to fit inside the opening. But on a window, most windows these days are called out at the width. The width they give you is the rough opening that they give you. You should always call your window company and say, what is the rough opening of these windows that I've ordered? Because sometimes it may be a 1/2 inch smaller, maybe a 1/2 inch bigger. They will give you that number happily, okay? But these days, on most of the general windows, you'll get whatever it states on the plan. That's generally what the rough opening is. All right, so now this is how we'd lay out a normal window. However, in this case, the homeowner has decided, well, I would like to have 3 windows fairly close to one another in here. And so to accommodate that, we're going to put a post in between each window. In between, there's 3 windows. It'll be window, post, window, post, window. We'll do the standard cripple king stud on the end, but we'll run the header over all the windows and just put posts in between the 2 windows. So this is a little different, but it's not difficult to do. So what I'll do is I will scratch out my king studs and my cripples. And I'll kind of get rid of my little lines here. Now it may be a little bit messy, but stay with me here. Okay, so we know that a 4x4 is the same width as a 2x4. So that's 3.5 inches. So our new line will be 3.5 inches over, because we're going to put a post underneath the header. So this whole area here is a post. Okay, made a nice big X there so I remember it. Same thing here. From the inside of the window, 3.5 inches over, and a big old X over to that, and a big old X over to that, and I write post, post, and I write post under here. All right, so now our next windows, the ones on either side of this window, are 2'6" wide and 4'1" high. So we'll step over here. We know that our post goes to there, so that's our measuring point. We'll line up with that line, and we'll come right over here, what did I say? 2'6", that's what I said, 2'6". Never hurts to check twice. Okay, I have another window from here to here. All right, do you remember what we do? What we did right here? Go 1.5" for our cripple, and 1.5" for our king stud. We'll do the same thing on this side. We know that this is the edge of our post, 2'6". It's right next to our layout line. All right, So again, 1.5 inches and 1.5 inches. This is our cripple, and this is our king. Get rid of this guy here. This is our king stud. And we'll make our mark across here. And we have these 3 windows. So, if we look at our plan, on this wall here, we have wall, window, 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 wall. We don't have any walls coming off of it. We don't have any jogs in the wall. We just have wall, window, post, window, wall. All right? And so we step back and we look at our wall and we see 1 window with a post, 1 window with a post, 1 window with a cripple and a king stud, and the rest of the wall is laid out for us already. I need to put my 3 lines here to remind me that I have to build an end on this wall. And there's only one thing left to do to this plate, is pick it up, put a big number 1 with an arrow, like that. And I'll put a number 1 with an arrow. That tells me that when I put this plate down, I know which end goes that way, and I know that that's number 1. Otherwise, occasionally you'll have the same length walls and you'll put them in the wrong spot and you'll build them, and believe me, you don't want to have to move a full length wall like this across the house and slide it in somewhere else. Because on a house, when you're putting your plates together like this, you may put 10 plates together, mark them up, and stack them off somewhere, and then bring them back and build them. And you certainly don't want to put one in the wrong place if you can avoid it. So now we'll do the same thing to the rest of these plates. We'll just march around and get each one of these plates built and laid out for the windows and for the studs. And once we get all that taken care of, we'll have 4 plates and we will start building some walls. All right, we're moving on to our second plate, and this is one of the intermediate plates. In other words, it's between the 2 outside walls. Those 2 plates go all the way to the end. These fit in between. Remember, when you go to build the wall, you want to build the longer walls first and then the intermediate walls second, so you have space to lift them up. Okay, this wall is pretty straightforward. All it has is a door in it, and it has a window, but this window is up above the wall, up in the eave. In the gable. So it's up in the gable. It's a little higher. We won't be seeing it, so we don't have to put any header in for that now. But we're just going to work with the door. So we're going to lay this out from this end. Now, one thing you got to think about, you don't have to think about it, but it's nice to think about. I'm going to lay this wall out from this end over. When I get to that end, I'm going to lay that wall out from the same end over. I laid this plate off of this corner, moving that way, and I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to start my layout here and I'm going to move that way. I'm only going to do that because when you're finished framing and the walls are all standing up, and you're standing up there and all the studs line up from that wall to that wall and this wall to this wall, it just looks kind of nice. And if you're doing this in a house and all the layout of the studs looks that way, it looks kind of neat if you just look straight down and you see a whole stud, whole stud. You don't have to do that. It's just kind of nice to do if you have the opportunity to do it. All right, well, let's just start laying out here. Now, I have the 3 studs here that I'm going to nail into. So this wall here just gets 1 stud, and that stud is just going to be flat up against this wall. So I'll come back, actually I'll put that in right now. I'll go 1.5 inches, and I'll put that guy in my keel. Okay, now I can go ahead and lay out for my layout. Okay. Okay. Now I'll just throw an X in here just to remind myself if by somehow I come back here to mark my lines for my studs, I get on the wrong side of the line, at least it will remind me. Now here we go, we run into the same situation. The stud will go from here to here. It's pretty close to the end. I don't need to worry about that. I'll just say one stud on that end right there. It was so close, it just was maybe a 1/4 inch off. Well, the stud will take up that difference. So I'm just going to put a stud right there to the end, and it'll work for my layout. If you have a stud that's 2 or 3 inches from the wall, put it in. You may think it's not necessary, but put it in, because if a sheet of sheetrock comes over and lands on that stud and there's no stud there, it's a bear to put it in later. So it's just much easier to just put it all in today. Now I look and make sure that I'm on the correct side of the line. All right, now we hop over to the plan, and we have a door here. It's a 3-0 door. Now I lay out doors a little bit differently than I lay out windows. I know a 3-foot door is 36 inches wide, but I'm more worried about the header. So you got to add 5 inches. So I know 36 inches plus 5 inches is 41. So I'm going to write right here 41-inch header. Okay? That just tells me, reminds me that when I go running over there to cut my 4x12, I'm going to cut a 41-inch header. Well, the plans note that it's about 6 inches off the wall, so I make my mark at 6 inches. Okay? And so what I do is I get to my line and I look down and I say I have a 41-inch header. So I mark it 41 inches right here. Okay, so we know the header's 41 inches long. So where should our cripple be? Well, our cripple has to be underneath the header, right? So we put the cripple on the inside of that line, and the king stud on the outside. All right, and now we have a door. So what I will do here is mark on the inside of the cripple 1.5 inches and measure, just to make sure I'm on the inside of my cripple. I have 3'2", and that's what I need. I need 2 inches over in the opening. I need 2 inches over because we have a 3/4 door jamb on this side and a 3/4 door jamb on this side. It leaves a 1/4 inch of play when we put that door in the opening. All right, like I said, we have a 3-foot door here. And so just to give you some illustration, here we have an opening. And we have the bottom plate here, we have the top plate here, and we have this header that's sticking in here. All right? Now we know we want this to be a 3-foot door, but the door that we put in, this door that's sitting over here, is not just the door. It has its big, heavy frame around it, right? 3/4 of an inch right here. So it's actually not 3 foot. It's about 3'1.5" inches, because 3/4 and 3/4. So all of this from here to here is, 3'1 1/4 inches. and that has to fit in this opening. So what we do is we make sure when we're done with this is that we have 3 foot 2 inches or more for this door to fit in. Excuse me, that's 3 foot 1/2 inch. So we want to make sure that we have at least that in this opening. Well, by making the header 5 inches longer, and now we have 2 cripples that are going up underneath the header here. Now, from cripple to cripple, we have just under 3 foot 2. And that's right where we need to be. It should be 3 foot 2. Maybe my tape was out of place a little bit. But my opening here is going to be big enough to fit this door. So we always, again, we always make the header on a door 5 inches bigger because we have our 2 cripples that are 3 inches, and that leaves us 2 extra inches to fit the door in. And we want that extra 1/2 inch on the side or 1/4 inch on each side for shimming, because if by chance it's an old house and it's a little crooked, it gives you a little bit more room to set the door in and shim it in correctly so you can case it out and it'll look just fine. Be nice and square. All right, so what I'm going to do again is I'm going to mark from here to here, just to remind myself not to put a stud here and here, because I know this is a door. And we don't have to worry about the window up above. So we have our door, we have our studs, our plates all laid out. The last thing again, what do we have to do? We have to number it. Number 2 with an arrow. Number 2 with an arrow. All right, let's build some walls.
Home Improvement Camp. Have at it.